All right, welcome to our July board meeting. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Bladner,
Here.
Ms. Evison,
Here.
Mr. Derby,
Here.
Ms. Kolovitz,
Here.
Mr. Long,
Here.
Mr. Rutledge,
Here.
Mr. Hanlon.
Here, Mr. Rutledge, lead us in the pledge. Board members, are there any modifications to the agenda tonight?
Rob, I have just one. I just want to mention to the board, when we get to action items, we're going to flip the order of the two action items. The budget should come first before we do the transfer to capital projects, just so board and community have a little context.
All right, thanks. Anyone else? All right, we're on to recognitions and achievements. Dr. Schuler, could you introduce those being recognized?
I'd love to. So we have two recognitions this evening. I'm going to start by bringing, I think, Mrs. Campos up to the podium. So I think board members may have had an opportunity at a couple of our assemblies at the end of the year, our recognition assemblies both at North and South, to hear a little bit about our gymnastics team that we honored, but we want to honor them today at the board level due to some incredible accomplishments. So Mrs. Campos.
Yeah, thanks for having us here today. Before I introduce the coaches, two phenomenal coaches, by the way, the epitome of what every parent would wish for in a coach are Joe and Greg. In fact, I'm going to actually quote, so I have to take out my glasses. I apologize. I should have made it bigger. But I had a parent who reached out at the end of the school year. Her son was graduating. And actually, her son is here, Jack. But Tracy Ongstead wanted just to extend what his experience was. And Jack, I don't know if you knew I was going to kind of call you out a little bit, but when Jack was about ready to enter high school, he didn't think he was going to be good enough for the gymnastics team. And his mom said, you just have to do it freshman year. And if you don't like it, you can quit. So he did. And you're going to find out how that turned out for him pretty darn well. But she sent me and the coaches an email, and I'm putting my glasses on because I want to quote it. Just so you do know that Jack ended up being senior gymnast of the year, state champion all around, state champions in still rings, high bar, pommel horse, and fourth in floor, and all state in all 7 events. So he turned out to be pretty good. But I think what his mom wanted to express, more than just gymnasts, these two coaches taught him, her words are, they taught him selflessness, worth ethic, leadership, and humility, lessons that he will use for the rest of his life. So I just wanted to point that out because these two coaches are more than just gymnastics coaches. They are life coaches. So Greg, Joe, come on up.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having us. I just want to introduce some of the guys who are on the team. Not all of them are here. We have 9. So I was just going to introduce the guys who are here and then also introduce the individuals who couldn't make it. So we'll start off with Beckett Crowley. Come on up. Okay. Luke Burgess. Jack Onstad. And a correction for the record, Jack was not state champion on pommel horse. He wishes. I wish. I wish. We wish pommel horse was kind of a struggle, but for honorary we could say that. But Jack did win, I think, 8 state titles over 2 years. Does that sound correct? That sounds about right. So some of the guys who aren't here, just want to make sure I get some names. We had Toby Korinsky, Patrick Malone, who also was an all-stater on all the events, and state champion last year on the high bar. Lyric Hyrisco, David Shimp, Ben Babar, and Joey Slavin were the other members that were on the team. But thank you so much for your recognition.
We'd love to have you come up so we can each shake your hands individually and thank you for accomplishment. Right. I'm going to also bring Ian Smith up to the podium now. So we started this year doing a community partner recognition at each of the board meetings, and one that we really hope to get done a little bit earlier in the year is Glenn Antunes from Glenn Bullock from Antunes, who's been a phenomenal community partner with the district over a number of years, and it took us till summer to be able to work the schedule out. But I'm going to ask Mr. Smith to get us kicked off with
Sure,
sharing
yeah.
a little bit about this important partnership.
Absolutely. And Glenn and Jenna, why don't you both just come up here as well? Jenna's going to share a few words also. So hello, everybody. Good evening. We're pleased to recognize Mr. Glenn Bullock, President and CEO of AJ Antunes and Company. Antunes is a globally recognized leader in the commercial food preparation industry. You've seen many of their products at McDonald's as well as many other restaurants. Antunes also produces commercial and residential water filtration systems, and through a charity called Splash, provides water filtration to schools, hospitals, and orphanages in some of the poorest areas of the world. The Antunes facility is truly state-of-the-art. I've been there a few times, and it's really amazing. It's something to see. And they have a very strong commitment, not only among the leadership to not only designing incredible products, but also to truly caring for the well-being of their employees. In addition, Antunes has a very strong commitment to high school and college apprenticeships. So we're very fortunate to have had 2 students recently participate in apprenticeships there. One of them, Wheaton North student Jenna Marichin, is now in the middle of her 2nd apprenticeship, and her brother, TJ, did one 2 years ago, and he also did 2 apprenticeships as well. So now I'd like to give Jenna an opportunity just to share a little bit about her experiences.
Thank you. So I just wanted to start and talk about like his really strong intern program that Glenn's been able to develop among the interns. So they make sure that you have a project throughout it and everyone gets the chance to put some work into it. Whether you're in sales, marketing, whatever you are, you're able to take some time and he really pours into this and make sure you do something for the company. So I've been able to take lead on that this past year and a little bit in the last year too, and just be able to work on something that's gonna actually impact our company. So being able to put that on a resume or even just show that I've done that and gained that knowledge is something that not many high schoolers, let alone like 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds, get to have going into college and figuring out what they wanted to do. Another thing that he does is they do rotations for high school interns. So that's something valuable that I'm really glad I've been able to be a part of and work on with like the sales team, supply chain. Well, I know I wanted to do engineering. Seeing more aspects of the business gave me more of an like insight to, okay, I'm engineering this, but I also know that has to fit and be brought somewhere, so supply chain comes in hand. So just being able to do that and take time to speak to every intern and make sure that we really feel valued and that I get to know Glenn more than the average like CEO would talk to an intern is way better. So I'm just really grateful for all that Antunes has given me these past 2 years. I'm hopeful to keep going with that. So thank you.
So, you know, we really appreciate, and I say we, my wife Jane is here with me. But, you know, we've been doing this program for 10, 15 years. We have about 15 interns that we have per year, usually 5 high school students and 10 college students. And just so you know, it's not all me. I have a huge staff that helps put the programs together, help the students figure out what they want to do and help them see what a manufacturing facility is like. And there's every type of discipline you can think of at our facility. So you can go into engineering, you go into supply chain, you can go into accounting. We always have different disciplines for the team to work on. So it's just been our honor to have these students come in, young adults, and just get them exposed to what a manufacturing facility could be. Because the connotation is when you hear about manufacturing facilities, some people think of a dark, dreary place to work, and there's dirt all over, and that's not our facility. We'd love to share our experiences with our team members that come in, our interns that come in, and it's just been really, I mean, I think we gain more than the interns gain, because at the end of the summer, we always have them give a presentation to the entire executive team. and they have to give a presentation of what they've done during the summer. And the professionalism that these young adults have is amazing. And we always enjoy listening to them, and we a lot of takeaways that they really participate in the growth of Antunes. So we thank them for all the input that they provide for our own team members. So anyway, it's anytime you want to have, we would love to open the facility up to give you a tour whenever you're there. We always have people around to give tours. So that's another opportunity if you'd like to do that sometime. But so thanks for the recognition, though.
Well, Glenn, thank you. On behalf of District 200, our team, the Board of Education, and the community, we really do thank you for being a valuable community partner, both for the direct experience that you provide, but more importantly for the example that you set for others to hopefully continue to engage with us. We have a vision and a dream that every high school student will have the kind of experience that you're providing, but we need lots of community partners to do that, so thank you. So I've got a little certificate that we're gonna bring to you and ask if you wouldn't mind. Actually, Ian, I'll give it to you. Again, please just know how much we appreciate the partnership with District 200.
All right, we have no public comments tonight, so we're going to move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Schuler?
I have just a couple of quick updates. One, I want to mention that as soon as we get to the consent agenda, the first 6 items on your consent agenda are acceptance of gifts. Always like to call that out because they come from partner organizations, PTAs, primarily in a booster group or two that just incredibly important to the school district. 2, I just want to mention on your consent agenda that you are approving tonight the student handbook changes. We actually presented that 2 meetings ago, and in our cadence, we should have brought that back at the last meeting. I missed that, and I apologize for not moving that back. We didn't get any comment directly on those handbook changes, so apologize. They sat out for public review an extra month. We still didn't get any comment directly on them, but that's why they're back in front of you tonight. And then third thing that I want to mention, you are going to get an update a little bit later in the agenda on your oral report on our middle school capital projects, just one piece to that. But I want to call out for the board and the community that on the facilities section of our website, the same page where we housed all of the referendum information, there is now a weekly video and a weekly print communication update showing progress. Again, you actually just heard a little bit on community partner and internship that's being done by an intern that just graduated from District 200 that's actually a part of our construction team and is doing those updates, but just a nice visual representation of what's going on. And I think as we begin to move ground, especially on the additions at both of those schools, I think the visual updates, the videos are going to become, I think, hopefully really helpful for the community. So we're going to continue to post that throughout the construction so that community can see that we are not only completing the work, but we're completing it on time, certainly under budget. So I just want to call that out. That's all I have.
Thank you. On to the consent agenda. I'm going to read the items. Acceptance of gifts from Longfellow Elementary School PTA. Acceptance of gifts from Madison Elementary School PTA. Acceptance of gifts from Washington Elementary School PTA. Acceptance of gift to Washington Elementary School. Acceptance of gifts from Hubble Middle School PTA. Acceptance of gift to Wheaton North High School football program. Approval of the 2025-26 student handbook changes. Approval of annual certification of serious safety hazard bus routes. Approval of waste and recycling services contract rates for school years 2025 to 2026. Approval of foreign travel liability insurance with CLIC. Approval of professional learning expenditure requests for board members. Approval to open previously closed minutes. Approval of the IASB 2025-2026 annual dues. Approval of bills payable and payroll. Approval of minutes, June 11, 2025, regular meeting, open, June 25, 2025, special meeting, open, and approval to destroy recordings of closed sessions prior to February 2024 as allowable by law. Approval of personnel report to include employment, resignation, retirement, and leave of absence of administrative, certified, classified, and non-union staff. Board members, are there any items that you would like removed from the consent agenda? Are we hearing none? Dr. Schuler, any additional information?
No additional information.
Board, any questions or comments? All right, Board, I need a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Jerpy, second by Ms. Kulovitz. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Jerpy?
Yes.
Ms. Kulovitz?
Yes.
Ms. Blattner?
Yes.
Ms. Evison?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hamlin?
Yes. We're on to the policy posting consent agenda. There are 12 revised or new policies for approval to post for public review and comment. They are 2.260, 5.60, 5.100, 6.235, 7.10, 7.20, 7.60, 7.70, 7.200, 7.250, 7.340, and 7.255, which is new. Board members, any items you'd like removed from the policy posting consent agenda? Dr. Schuler, any items, any information for the board at this time?
Yeah, this is the second half of the last press issue. We posted a number of policies at your last meeting. There were a few that we took a little additional time to review, both with our team and with our attorney, especially one that was new, and there's some related pieces. But we met with the HR Policy Committee. Ms. Kulovitz, I don't know if you want to make any comment now, kind of take care of that report, because that was really the bulk of our.
I think you covered everything. That was the only thing I was going to say in the HR report, is that last press issue we split up into two because of the further review we wanted to do on some policies that were impacted by a new state law.
Board members, are there any questions or comments?
Tangentially related to the 760 residents for public review, I'm just wondering how many slots we're currently providing for exchange student programs at our high schools?
I don't know that I have that information offhand. I can certainly get it for you.
Okay. It was interesting that the policy didn't explicitly seem to provide an allowance for that, but I was assuming we still provide that. So not urgent, but if you could let me know. But we do still have a offering there, correct? For non-resident exchange students of some sort?
I'll get
Okay.
that information exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board? All right, board, I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Hold on, I got finished. Oh, you jumped. I lost my track. Let me try again, okay?
Yeah, me too.
All right, good. Board, I need a motion and a second to approve the policy posting consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Nice.
Second.
Sorry.
Moved by Mr. Long, second by Ms. Kulovitz. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Ms. Kulovitz?
Yes.
Ms. Blattner?
Yes.
Ms. Evison?
Yes.
Mr. Jerpy?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Mr. Hamlin?
Yes. Who knew a policy posting consent agenda could be so fun? All right, we are on to the policy approval consent agenda, and we have 12 revised policies for approval tonight, and they are 4.150, 4.80, 5.10, 5.20, 6.150, 7.180, 7.185, 7.190, 7.210, 7.270, 7.310, and 7.315. Dr. Schuler?
I just will confirm, we did not receive any public comment on these. They were posted after your last meeting.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? All right, board, I need a motion and a second to approve the policy approval consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Evison, second by Mr. Rutledge. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Evison?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Ms. Blattner?
Yes.
Mr. Jerpy?
Yes.
Ms. Kulovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Hamlin?
Yes. All right, on to action items. We have two tonight on the agenda. As a reminder, we're going to the second one first. Dr. Schuler, would you please introduce and share any additional information?
Yeah, so in January, one of the first things that Dr. O'Keefe does at your January meeting is post for you or ask the board to give authorization to begin development of the budget. And so I know that the board has been anxiously awaiting and looking forward to this presentation when Dr. O'Keefe, that's why he's leaving the room right now because of your anticipation. But Dr. O'Keefe is here to present his tentative budget to you this evening. This was reviewed with the Finance Committee at its last meeting, but I'm going to hand it right over to Dr. O'Keefe to get it started.
Yeah, I could play Mr. Biskin tonight, and we could switch since we're wearing, in essence, the same outfit. Some people think that he is me, and I am him, but we'll move along. So what you can't see, which you'll see shortly in here, is this year we just took a little bit of a different approach to break this into chunks. I know over the next 3 hours, you're going to be very excited to hear everything that we're discussing, but we want to break it just into chunks, and it might make sense, too, that if there are questions specific to those areas, we address them while they're fresh and top of mind. If you actually turn to the second slide, it'll talk about the specific outline. So we've got our background information, so what we're legally required to do. We've got historical audited financial information that comes from one of our partners' websites, specifically being pulled out of your AFR, your annual financial reports. Then we'll dive into the actual perfect. Then we'll dive into the budget highlights and future considerations. Then we'll show you what it actually looks like from the dollars and cents perspective and break down the last piece from the revenue and expenditure side of things, both high level and then specifically on the operating side. So as you've seen before, if you've heard my presentations and those of my predecessor, there is a specific calendar that we follow here. It starts every January, finishes in September. The state school code specifically requires that all public education school districts pass a budget by a quorum no later than September 30th of each specific calendar year for that budget year that you've entered into. So what we do is we ask you in January to begin the process because this is certainly a long and a large budget from a school district perspective. We incorporate some of that data into the 5-year forecast, what we know of near the end of January. Excuse me, February through June is just preparation. And for those that have not heard or seen this before, this is all levels of the organization. So some parts of our budget are zero-based. Some parts of our budget are similar to what we looked at last year. Some parts of our budget are strict and specific, i.e. salaries, when we know all of those, especially in the final budget. And then there are other parts of the budget that we discuss from a department perspective, from a school perspective, and from a level perspective. So all parts of our organization are involved in the budget process. This is not the business office determining what happens on behalf of the Board of Education or the community. This is an internal community budget process that we work through every single year. Last week, July 2nd, we actually brought the tentative budget and received some feedbacks from the Finance Committee. Thank you very much from that. So they've seen this in advance. Tonight is July 9th, which we will open this up for 30 days for public comment, and then we will have a public hearing at your regular board meeting in August, which you see is the 13th, and then we'll bring back the final budget to you on September 10th. Part of the posting requirements from a school code perspective is that we post it in a local newspaper of access, that's the Daily Herald, and then we also have it online at the website, and we'll physically have a hard copy of that here inside the building. Just as a reminder, inside of your green folders too, you've got the presentation, and they have a physical copy of the tentative budget book that breaks everything out by fund and then in aggregate at the end. So a few other pieces of background information for you. You've got 3 policies that the budget specifically aligns to. So it's the process of developing a budget, that's 410, making sure it's within your fund balance budget, which is 420, and then your capital Sherman-Durgis project and methodology is 4-152, and that allows us to do the things we do every summer with your support and then transfer those funds out of O&M and into capital projects to pay for the actual capital project work. This is all outside of the middle school capital project work, which I'll talk about here in just a few minutes. A few other priorities as a whole. We certainly align the budget to your strategies, to our strategies. We have 6 academic and 6 operational strategies. Every part of the budget is developed to support specifically Vision 2026 and these strategies. If you've heard this before, I'll try to make it as simple as possible, but there are 2 methods of accounting as a whole. Cash, when does it come in, when does it leave? That's the budget. So your budget is a cash-based budget. So we account for when we bring money in and when money goes out. The accrual method, which is your annual financial report, that's the method used by your auditors. It takes into account what should have occurred in the fiscal year, meaning it looks at July and August every year for both the revenue and expenditure piece, and anything that was attributable to the prior fiscal year, it pulls it back. So if you look at your budget and you look at your annual financial reports, they will never match. They will never come close because it's 2 completely different methods of accounting that are used to create each of those documents as a whole. A few other just bits of information. So there are technically 9 funds that are available to a Board of Education. We just use 7. Education Fund, O&M, Debt Service, Transportation, IMRF, and Social Security is one specific fund. Capital projects, everything that we take care of from a capital project side comes out, and then working cash. And as you've heard me say before, working cash is your piggy bank. We use working cash each spring to fund operations. When it comes to revenues, some just major categories. So we have local, the biggest in any public school district, certainly in this area, is property taxes. I'll talk about a few of those others here in a minute. State sources, much more minor from the aggregate, but still important, including evidence-based funding and the board's reimbursement for prior year expenditures related to private facilities and transportation. And then one thing that certainly was a part of questions that came in from the board and is top of mind for all of us within the state and throughout the country are federal sources. So title grants, IDA grants, Medicaid reimbursement, and then CTE and Perkins grants, which are specific to the high schools. Expenditure is pretty simple across the board. There's 9 up here. There's really 8 total categories. The provision for contingencies at the end is really a set aside in case of emergency. It's not a practice that we're a part of, but if you just think of salaries, benefits, purchase services, so anything that we ask somebody to do on our behalf, a supply is anything less than $500, a capital outlay or construction, that's anything over $5,000, other objects, which is a $600, so it's your debt payments, it's paying for private facility tuition, dues and fees, other things like that fit into other objects. We do use quite often, especially both within grants and within Mr. Spencer's world of technology. We've got non-capitalized equipment, meaning it's more than $500, but less than $5,000. So we don't consider that actually a capitalized piece of equipment. And then termination of benefits, that can be anything from specifically vacation days that are paid out as we are legally required to do so if they've not been used, or any post-retirement benefits that are specific to our contract that's in place. Any questions on that first piece, just the budget background?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can you explain why we have the 2 different types of accounting systems for our budget and our audit?
Well, it's not accounting systems,
Or
it's just methods.
methods of accounting.
So your financial system is a cash basis financial system, and we have historically tied the budget to the cash basis side of things because that's, if we didn't, we would actually end up having 2 financial systems to do that, one to track what where we should be and one to track where we are. So it's an alignment from a financial system perspective, and it actually gives the Board of Education real-time data as to what's happening inside the district, not data that should have happened, especially when you think about payments that are in lieu of that haven't been received yet. So it, from my perspective, it gives you a much better ongoing month-to-month perspective of where we're at, both expenditure and revenue-wise, than just the accrual method if we were to present that to you as a whole. You wouldn't see a clean picture each month if we did that. Just a few graphs and charts for you. So your operating fund balance history and your board policy indicates we should be in from an operating perspective. So that's funds 10, 20, 40, and 70. So education, O&M, transportation, and working cash. In this slide, the blue is the education up top. It's a big chunk of it, almost half of it. Orange is O&M. Red is transportation. You can see that's it gets thin in certain times and is certainly getting thinner as we progress along. We'll talk about transportation here in a few minutes too, and then working cash. And again, that's your piggy bank, and working cash does not grow through anything from the levy side of things. The growth in working cash is all tied to whether or not there's interest income being earned on those dollars. So this is a fiscal year 24, which is not the fiscal year we just finished. The auditors are working on fiscal year 25, but your fiscal year 24 audited fund balance was 31.04%, just about smack dab in the middle of your fund balance policy. We are expecting your fiscal year 25 to be somewhere in that vicinity. We don't have any real good details from the auditors yet because they're still working through everything as year end just finished not 2 weeks ago. And then would anticipate, at least on the based on the tentative budget, be in that 30-31% range. Two, the challenge, bless you, the challenge is if you have an outpacing of revenue growth compared to your fund growth, that percentage is going to move down a little bit just because the numbers aren't there, but we're not anywhere near a point where we need to be concerned about it. Financial profile score put together through the AFR and codified by the state of Illinois. A perfect score is 4.0. The district has had a 3.9 for the last 5 years, which is financial recognition. 3.8 for the 5 years before that, also financial recognition. The one thing that you see that's changed over time is about 2/3 of the way up, that little yellow bar that says cash. On your annual financial statements, it is a requirement by the auditors to tell you the number of days in cash you have based on your ending balances. That, if you want a perfect score on that, has to be 180 plus days. We're at 147 as of fiscal year 24. But because of the way that we operate, how our budgets are built, and the fact that we use working cash to support operations in March and April and May, I think it would be extremely difficult to get to a perfect 4.0. But even if we did, it doesn't change anything from an operational perspective. It's just, and you still would be in recognition status. There's no perfect score from a recognition perspective, but that's the one thing that lays out there, and that just has to do with how we're built from an operational perspective. Total revenues here, so this is all funds 10 through 70. Biggest thing you see, education, obviously that's the biggest revenue and the biggest expenditure side of things. When you get into operating revenue, again, that's revenue associated with funds 10, 20, 40, and 70. Once again, education is the vast majority of that specific revenue. If you look at total expenditures, wide across the board, this is all funds. So this includes debt service and other objects and all things of that nature. That's the purple bar up top. And you see salaries and benefits in the aqua and then light green below that. That's looking at total expenses throughout all funds. When you get into the operating expenditures, this really is the telltale sign of what it costs to run a school district, because 3/4 of every dollar that is spent inside this district, specifically on the operation side of things, is related to salaries and benefits. And those are the two bars on the bottom. And I'm sorry I didn't mention before, this is a 10-year running history. We've now got some longer longitudinal data within Frontline that we can provide to you. So all of these are a 10-year look back, not including last fiscal year. If we look at our operating expense per pupil, that's what do we spend on average per pupil from an operating perspective. It doesn't include debt service, Jefferson Early Childhood Center, things of that nature. You can see we're the red bar, third from the left. Batavia is next to us, not one of our cores, but I added it in here just to give some perspective. We're below the average line as a whole, and certainly second from the bottom in our true comparables. If you pull out Batavia, and the message behind that is the amount of opportunities and the education that we provide to our families at a reasonable and conservative cost basis side of things, I think is nothing short of phenomenal and outstanding. And it's not about every dollar that is spent, it's about how every dollar is spent to support the student experience as a whole. This is what it looks like just in a different type of chart, different perspective, tough to read. Indian Prairie's at the bottom there in the dark red. We're right above it in that more highlighted red as a whole. So we've consistently, when it comes to our comparables, over the last 10 years, at the very least, been second to the bottom, still providing the type of experience that we do.
Brian, what is that number on the operating expense per pupil?
Our number is, sorry, I didn't write down our number. The average that's in here, geez, these glasses that I'm not wearing aren't helping. The average is 19,175. So last year, if I recall correctly, from your 24 AFR, we were right around 17.3 or 17.4. When it comes to the charts and graphs, any other questions there?
Without overanalyzing, if you go back to the operating fund balance history,
Mhm.
is there anything to be interpreted
Oops.
from,
Sorry, guys, that was me.
while you're fishing, anything to be interpreted from the balance as a percent of expense crossing over into the bar graph for the first time in 2020?
Well, it's not as expensive, so that's a percentage of total revenues. So it's your fund balance to total revenues. It says revenues or expenditures on the right-hand side of the chart,
Yeah.
not something that I can get rid of pulling it out of the
But it's
system,
it's revenue.
but it's revenues. So it's percentage of revenues. Your actual percentage, because I did originally have that in there, your percentage is based on expenditure or slightly above where we're at right here when you look at fund
But
balance.
when the black line's crossing into the bars, is there anything to be interpreted from that? I don't
No,
think so
no,
either, right?
no, it just means your
independent.
fund balance, yes. Your fund balances in aggregate are growing at a pace that just happens to be beyond where that target is as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, fine, thank you. That makes sense.
So some background, a little bit of history, and now the actual meat and potatoes of your tentative budget. So the revenue section, some major categories. Obviously, as we all talk about, and we'll bring back to you in November for a first look. That's your levy. Levy is the most important thing we do from the revenue side of things. It is the largest amount of income and revenue that comes into the district. Every fiscal year budget has 2 levy years in it. In addition to that, we've got additional types of years that factor into it. So the federal budget year begins October 1st. Our budget year begins July 1st. The state's budget year begins July 1st. The TRS budget year begins July 1st. We've got within all of that 2 different tax levies built into a single fiscal year. And on top of it, IMRF is based on a calendar budget year. So there's lots of moving parts in there. And in some cases, we've got to make some estimations because we don't always have clear data as it relates to each of those areas. And I'll talk about a few of those. But the budget specifically and the levy around it, biggest impact to the budget as a whole. For those of you that were sitting on the board, if you recall, the 2024 levy, so the levy that we brought to you at the end of last year that you approved in December, was based on a CPI from the prior December, which is 3.4%. That specific 24 levy, we began collecting this spring. We actually collected 52.53% of the total levy before June 30th. That was up about 20 basis points from the previous levy, so the 2023 levy, but down about 20 basis points or 0.2% from the levy before that. So on average, over the last 3 years, your collections have been 52.5% of the total levy have come in from a cash basis perspective by June 30th, but the auditors split that in half when they're doing your financial statements on an annual basis. We have to adjust the budget to account for it because the budget is based on a cash basis. So we have to adjust the fall collection and then relook typically at the spring collection for the next year. The CPI from this past December, so December of 24, was at 2.9%. That's being used in this budget. It will be used in this specific upcoming levy that we bring to you at the end of the year. That will be incorporated into the collections through the bills that are given to taxpayers next spring. As a reminder, inside of the levy, the value, equalized assessed the value, and then equalized assessed value of properties in the district are always based on the first day of the calendar year. So tax bills that came to all of us this spring were based on values the first day, January 1st of 2024, not 2025. and then we've got different levy years within. So there's lots of moving parts always as a whole. And again, as those of us that are taxpayers know, those taxes are always in arrears. The distributions from last year, so our actual new construction was $35.1 million. That included a big bump from Arden Apartments over on Ferry Road in Warrenville. We are estimating $35 million at this point from a budget perspective. That very well could change for the final actual tax levy, because we want to make sure, as you've heard me say before, if you miss a dollar, you miss it in perpetuity from a new construction perspective. So we will begin working middle of October, end of October with our township assessors to get data. The biggest thing to me at this point that will have a positive impact on the district is really not quite the closing out of Napier Commons, because they are still finishing up this year, but a significant amount of properties, couple dozen properties actually closed in 2024 that should have been articulated on the tax rolls January 1st of this calendar year. I would imagine that that makes up a big chunk of what the estimate's going to be for the levy. We certainly have TIFs. We have TIFs, one TIF remaining. It's number 3 in Wheaton. There are 2 TIFs in Warrenville. The one in Wheaton is on the east side of Main Street around downtown and the train tracks. The Warrenville TIFs, one is specifically right over by City Hall, and then the second one is Everton Apartments in Lexington Trace over at the corner of Butterfield and Route 59. Those TIFs are much newer, much different than TIF 3, which is downtown. Dr. Schuler just not even 2 weeks ago had a meeting with the city, brought back some wonderful news to share with me on a Friday morning, and said that the city as a whole, the city management team will be asking and providing information to city council requesting a surplus disbursement that happened just 2 years ago, so 2 fiscal years ago for us. We're being told that the total disbursement of $3 million, which was the same as the total disbursement the last time this was done, is what they're planning as of just not even quite 2 weeks ago. At this point, our estimate, we're about not quite 3/4, we're in between 2/3 and 3/4 of that, because it all depends on the total equalized assessed value of all government districts built into that TIF. So if in fact the city moves forward with that, it goes to DuPage County. They run all the calculations and then give us the information. But just to give you a bit of a perspective, we've budgeted $2 million for it. The last time this occurred, the payment that actually reached you was $2,089,000. So probably it's going to be very close to what we're estimating, maybe even a little bit higher. That'll benefit us in the long run. I haven't heard anything else about TIF 3 nor anything specific new from TIFs 3 or 4 in Warrenville. CPPRT, which is always a challenge. So back in before 1979, local governments could actually tax the property inside of a business, inside of their boundaries. That law was repealed in 1979. What was put in place is referred to as PPRT, but technically it's CPPRT. So that's the collection on the profitability of organizations from their actual financial years. It's 2.5% for corporations, 1.5% for partnerships and S corps, and then surprisingly 0.8% for utilities. All those estimates come from Department of Revenue. They are never right, and it's not because Department of Revenue doesn't know how to aggregate data or do a really good estimate. It's because tax submissions can always be changed and amended year over year. So what they're putting in place is what they believe were the total taxes that would have come, the profitability, the taxes off the profitability from the last collection year, last year of submission, and then they make adjustments as a whole. And for those of you that have been on the board for a bit, you remember CPRT was about $2 million a year. It spiked to $7 million, and we're back down to $3 million, and that's about where I anticipate we're going to stay. We don't get an estimate from the Department of Revenue. If we're lucky, late August, typically early September. Whatever we know, we'll build into the final budget. Interest earnings, it's been a boon the last couple of years. In fact, over the weekend, you were still earning 4.5% on your money market fund through Wheaton Bank and Trust. You were earning 4.55% on the debt service that was issued back in March that's sitting with PMA. Those are earnings that we'll be able to talk to you about In the future, we are decreasing, the actual outcome of fiscal year 25 into fiscal year 26. We do anticipate there's going to be some reductions in the overnight rate from the Fed. In the model, we've got 3 reductions occurring between now at the end of the year, and those reductions being 1/4 point. We'll see what happens, but we're not super aggressive with where we believe interest earnings are going to be. I mentioned before state funding, so EBF is the biggest thing. Last year in new EBF money, we received $224,000. I've slightly increased that this year, really did get to an even number of $14.5 million as a whole in the tentative budget. We should come in right around there. We'll find out the second week of August from the state and exactly what that output is, and then what your fund percentage or your funding percentage as a total is for our district and everybody else. And as a reminder of what we do with EBF, it goes into the education fund. We put a portion of that into the bond and interest fund to pay for the lease certificates at Jefferson. That's a promise the Board of Education made when Jefferson was built. We do not use tax dollars for that. We use state money to support that, operating dollars to support that. And then this year we've had to move more money into transportation, which I'll talk about here in just a few minutes because of the escalating costs and the challenge with reimbursements from the state on that end too. Categoricals, we've left them flat year over year. And specifically, I'll get into why that is here in just a minute when we talk about the future, but those are flat year over year. We're not sure where those are going to be in terms of proration percentages. And then certainly the big thing that's been in the news and all over the place, federal funding. We have a lot of allotments or allocations at this point, but not in every method or specific grant. There are still some grants that we don't have dollars in. What we've done is we've taken what we've known in the initial allotment, assumed carryover, so money that we believe was not going to be spent, that we could bring into next year, and then spend that money, but we'd also be reimbursed for that money. So it's a dollar for dollar trade. The big thing is if there are any specific federal grants, which we use to support all of our local opportunities and programming, if a grant was dry, that's a much different perspective than a little bit less. So the allotments are not eye-popping in terms of differences, but it's something we're paying attention to every day. And any piece of information that we have on the federal level, we'll explain more specifically when we get to the final budget, because things do change between now and then. Any questions on the revenues?
The surplus, I'm just assuming it's a one-time deal.
One-time deal.
Yeah, thanks.
Just from a cash flow perspective, when does the treasurer remit the property taxes to us? Is that a one-time deal twice a year or?
No, we get, so for the levy 2024, your first payment was the last Friday before Labor Day, and then we got 2 in June, big ones in June, and then we get 1 in July, 1 in August, 1 in September, 1 in October, 1 November, 1 final one in December, because there are some taxes that are in arrears that don't get paid on time. But the biggest chunks that come in are June. First payment's usually a little smaller in May, but it helps get us into the first payment in June, but June and September are the 2 biggest months.
I have 2 very specific questions, but would you rather that I wait till the end or just?
Is it
Okay.
about revenue?
It is about revenue.
Okay, yeah,
So
sure.
the first one I asked in the pre-meeting questions about 1711, the athletic admissions
Yes.
revenue. I'm just very curious why there's such a drop from 2023 to 2024, and then
Well,
next year.
there is an agreement where those technically those are flow-through funds. So those dollars come into the schools and they come to us, get deposited in accounts, and we push them back out. So part of what we've done with the booster clubs too at each of the high schools is rearrange a little bit of that arrangement. There used to be a bigger percentage that would come to the district and be kept at the district level. Jordan and I worked with both booster organizations on both sides of town to help them capture and retain a little bit more of what's coming. Think gate receipts, concession receipts, things like that. We still have to track those through the financial system, but then we push those dollars back.
So it's staying back at the school.
The arrangement is just a lot. We're keeping a lot less at the district level because
Okay.
really Jordan and I looked at it. I think the responsibility of those organizations and the amount of work that they do I'm just worried about covering overhead. There shouldn't be a profit side of
Agree.
that to the attendance side of things. So we're pushing, we just need to make sure that whatever the cost is to do the things we need to do, we're covering, we put it back to the schools.
Perfect. Thank you. That explains it. I was more concerned that were we seeing a drop in students participating?
Nope.
Okay. Because yeah. Second question just occurred to me with the Medicaid reimbursement. Hang on, let me find it here. Between again 2023 and 2024, we nearly doubled we did double in our revenue from Medicaid. What was do you know what the cost for that?
In 24, there was a $900,000 one-time payment. That was a back settlement that came from the federal government for receipts specific to Medicaid reimbursement. That was from fiscal year 22.
Okay, so then
So-
why for 25, 26 are we expecting a big jump again?
Well, I mean, there's two pieces to it. So the amount of supports that we provide, so the greater supports, the greater reimbursement. The question is and we have so think of it like this. Any service that's provided to a student that is Medicaid eligible, all of those services and the time associated with those services are kept track of at the local level. We provide that to a third-party organization that then gets it off to the state and to the feds. So the more amount of time that we spend with students based on their IEPs and their specific needs as a whole, the greater the cost our costs are increasing related to salaries, benefits, supplies, supports every year. So increase in costs, increase in services, realistically should equate to an increase in Medicaid reimbursement. What we don't know is exactly what we're going to be getting back from the feds yet. So it's an estimate on where we think we're going to be for this year. We'll refine that as we get closer to the final budget.
Okay, thank you.
But there
would be
is
surprised that
there is a seven-figure reimbursement to the board through the Medicaid program at the federal level to support students that are specifically getting supports that whose families happen to be Medicaid eligible.
And so is it, I don't want to use the word illegal, but not allowed for us to ever pursue private insurance reimbursement for services?
Well, we get private facility reimbursement through the state. So if you're talking about private supports through an outside organization and
No.
it's not being done by us?
Private student insurance to reimburse services provided at school.
Never
Because
had-
Medicaid technically is a private insurance, well, an insurance for the students that's reimbursing,
Yeah, but it's a government-based insurance, not an insurance through
right? Okay. Okay,
a local,
thank you.
not or non-for-profit. But we're required to keep track of every single minute of time spent with students to ensure that we have an understanding of what those costs are, and then we submit those costs on a yearly basis. It's actually done by
But only for kids who qualify for Medicaid?
only for kids qualified,
Okay.
correct? Yep.
Okay, thank you.
So the expenditure side of things, and maybe the battery went again, or I did something wrong. Once we get to the expense, sorry guys. Once we get to the expenditures, big piece out of it, as we know, we've got some areas that are consistent. So salaries and benefits are going to be, sorry, I'm sure this is total user error tonight. There we go. Salaries and benefits are 3/4 of every dollar that we spend. We have some very specific knowns. So you've got a certified contract with the the WWEA. We are walking into the third of 4 years with that contract. This will be the third year of a 6% increase. The fourth year is a floor of 3.5 and a ceiling of 4.5, and that depends on what the split between the upcoming CPI from this December and the CPI from December of 24. Add those two together, divided in half. That's the increase. Based on trends so far with CPI, I would imagine we would be closer to the floor of 3.5 for fiscal year 27. Classified staff, you just a few months ago approved a new contract, new 3-year contract with that bargaining unit. The average increase for that staff across the board is 4.43%. Non-union classified staff received a 4.5% increase. Administration a 3% increase. So that's that's the biggest chunk of our overall expenditures. When we look at benefits, benefits are not only medical, dental, life insurance, but benefits are considered from a budget perspective. Anything that's related to TRS payments, on behalf payments, TRS payments, IMRF pension payments. If we use a federal grant for salaries, we're required to pay what is referred to as the TRS federal rate that's actually set by the state of Illinois, not the federal government. That rate is now constant for 2 years in a row. It'll be 10.34%. So every dollar we put into a federal grant that's for a salary, we have to set aside 10.34 cents in order to use that federal grant to make sure that the proper payment for those TRS benefit and creditable earnings are going to TRS inside the state. IMRF, for calendar year 2025, the employer charge is 7.15%. The employees in IMRF pay 4.5%. The projected rate for next year is 7.41%. We will get the final number for that in November, but it's not a major swing in terms of percentages or dollars. When they get into, so that's salaries and benefits, when you look through purchase services, so all of the curriculum to support our students and our staff. So our one-to-one programs on the technology side, we have outsourced contracts for food service, custodial, transportation, as we've brought to you in the past. Certainly some spikes were anticipated in deliverable costs for electricity this year. So we've got electric, we're part of an electric co-op, a natural gas co-op. The Wheaton Sanitary District provides us with our sanitation, and then phone and water across the board. Those are some major utility categories. Biggest thing on an outplace side of things is tuition. So students attending private facilities, there's a tuition that's set, a daily rate set by the state if it's in-state specifically. So those are costs. We certainly have all of our student activity accounts at each of our 21 schools, and then we have to build in the lease payment, as I mentioned earlier, for Jefferson. Other areas inside the expenditures, and it's something you're going to approve. We're asking you to approve tonight. So your Sherman Durgis capital projects, those are always paid as of July 1st. So the projects start before them, but the first bills are not paid until the new fiscal year. We have almost $7.1 million in projects just on the Sherman Durgis side this summer. You see a list of all those in front of you. And then the other piece that we've built into this budget too. So the remaining portion of your first debt issuance, which was 76 million this past March. We've spent not quite 7.35 or so, not quite $7.4 million so far through June 30th. We anticipate, based on construction schedules, based on drawdown schedules, that we will spend the rest of that first issuance in this year, which will set up for a very good conversation about arbitrage for us at some point in the future related to interest earnings. And then specifically, we are planning for that second issuance so it can be attached to your levy 2025, the early part of calendar year of 26. Before I just quickly go through future considerations, any questions on expenditures?
Can you do it from the podium, or we can answer it later? Which areas did we zero-based budget? Because you mentioned you did ZBB somewhere.
Building-based budgets are zero-based. Every single building-based budget is building-based. So we come up with, we have a formula that's based off of registration fees that we use, and we build that into based on number of head count at the end of the school year. The formula calculates a total for the building. We give the dollar amount to the building determines where it uses those dollars.
If I look at the supplies and just the overall budget, so is that mostly building supplies?
That would be from the principal's office side of things, mostly building supplies. But they do fund, they're funding art, they're funding music, they're funding different areas from a local perspective that they have deemed as important from their school.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. If people see the number, it's a little large, or the increase is high, you're like, that's actually a pretty good thing.
Yeah.
I have a quick question on it. So if the budgeting model is based on registration fees or just head count, is there a way to account that some buildings might have higher needs than others?
Yeah. So it's not the budgeting model that's based on that. It's merely the building budgets that are based on that. And yes, any building that's a Title I building, we take an average of what all the elementaries are. And if they happen to be a Title I school, there's a little bit of bump for them too. And if they're below average, we're made sure they're not harmed in any way. So we hold them harmless. If they're above average, there's a little bit of a weighting that allows for that. When you're talking about building budgets though, in aggregate compared to the total budget, building budgets are $1 million, less than $1 million of what we give them specifically to determine. Everything else from a salaries benefits perspective comes out of our office, but that is always zero-based because we don't tell the buildings how to use the money. They tell us how they want to use the money. Some future considerations and some that have already come to fruition. So certainly, as we talk about where additional sources of revenue could be, a conversation about restoring pre-pandemic rates to registration fees would be an option for the Board of Education, not something we're recommending or discussing for this year, but certainly something that could be considered for the future. We are anticipating the disbursement of TIF number 3 surplus. That very well could happen again at some point in the future. Not sure if that would happen prior to the expiration of the TIF, but certainly it will be factored into our long-term and our 5-year forecasts. And then any other community partnerships that we can consider from a cost-sharing perspective. And I think a great example of that on behalf of the board this summer is the new whole Pleasant Hill Park that's being built by the Village of Carroll Stream, being built by the Carroll Stream Park District with support from the Village of Carroll Stream, but specifically also support from the Board of Education to be able to get a new playground in behind Pleasant Hill. Just a reminder to the board and to the community, that's not property that we own. So it is a true partnership between us and the Park District. We certainly, the Park District at Carroll Stream, we do a lot of things ongoing with the Park Districts over at Warrenville and Wheaton Wheaton and Warrenville. We might be able to look at those opportunities in the future again. Potential reductions in revenue. Like I mentioned, there's uncertainty still around the final allocations and whether or not carryover can happen at the federal grant side of things. If carryover can't happen, think of that as a dollar-for-dollar trade-off. We bring it in, we spend it, so it doesn't negatively impact the budget. But if there's a significant change in any of the federal grants that have been shared with us so far, that very well could cause us a little bit of pain. I mentioned mandated categoricals before. So the way that these work is you, the school district, the Board of Education, pays for all the expenditures in a given year. We then have an open window, a process to ask for reimbursement from the state for those expenditures, specifically private facility, regular transportation, special ed transportation. The allocations that come back to the districts are all based on a proration of a single budget at the state level. So we all local governments, all school districts could conceivably submit $10 billion worth of expenditures to the state. But if there's only $5 billion built in the budget, your proration is 50%. That means you get 50% back of what you spent the year before. And the biggest challenge for that specifically is in transportation. Private facility is usually a bit better on the proration. Transportation is the one that technically gets harmed more often than not. A reminder, all day kindergarten for everybody starts in the 27-28 school year. So the revenue associated with that we've been charging for all day kindergarten will go away after fiscal year 27. In fiscal year 24, that was roughly $1 million. It's going to be about the same number in fiscal year 25. So something to consider. And then always, we don't know exactly, it's a tough budget year for the state of Illinois. There's a lot of things that the governor and legislation really was interested in building into the budget that they couldn't as a whole, and we're not quite sure exactly what that might mean for the next few years too. If you're talking about future expenditures, if there is, let's just say that for some reason federal grants were wiped out, that's a shifting of a revenue source that disappears and those become local expenditures. If in fact we retain all of those and/or positions or things that we need to support students, so that's something. We're not aware of anything like that happening, but it potentially could be something. We'll talk with the facilities committee sometime soon about our athletic fields at the high schools, at both high schools, bleachers, press boxes, some other ideas we have from the athletic external side of our high schools. We don't know anything, don't anticipate anything. There's always this kind of hovering thing. Could Tier 1 somehow costs be shifted to local governments from the state, because the state outside of Cook County does bore the expense for pension expenditures? And then we're still waiting on anything that may come regarding Tier 2. That's the Social Security sunset provision that is going to be the state's going to be in violation of very, very soon, just based on how Tier 2 is set up for every pension system in the state. There's an adjustment. That question is whether or not with those adjustments, does something get pushed locally? Questions on future considerations? All right, the nuts and the bolts. So the summary of the budget in total, about $312 million in revenues, a little bit above that in expenditures. That major difference specifically is because we are not including the transfer of that $7.1 million out of 20 into Fund 60 to pay for Sherman Durgis. That is done specifically based on the state budget form. The state does not consider a transfer of resources out of one fund to another to be revenue. So that's why the overall budget looks the way it does. But if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak to that here on the next page, this is specifically your operating budget, which according to your board policy and all expectations, all things being equal, we want balanced. You actually have roughly a $9.6 million surplus. We would actually back the $7 million from Sherman Durgis out of that. And if you look at the bottom right-hand side of things, that's where you get to what we're projecting at this point to be a $2.5 million aggregate surplus in the operating funds. You see, obviously, there's no expenditures on the working cash side of things. That always helps us balance the overall budget. You see our challenge there with Fund 40. That's even with bringing more money over from EBF, so it's something we have to pay attention to for fiscal year 26, the final budget and beyond. And then the major, almost exact $2 million surplus in Fund 10 is specific to what we anticipate being that TIF 3 surplus development payment from the the city of Wheaton through DuPage County. A quick little year-over-year comparison. Nothing significant in terms of increases on both the revenue and expenditure side. And again, this is just operating, so it does not include bond and interest, IMRF for capital projects. If you look at our revenue sources by all funds, there's a breakdown between local, state, and federal, not including any transfers related to Sherman Durgis, not including the middle school capital project money that we anticipate spending because that money is already sitting in the capital projects fund. Here's the breakdown through an all-fund perspective. So roughly 78% of your total revenue comes specifically from property taxes, and you see the breakdown for each of the other major categories. If we look at operating funds, smaller number because it's funds 10, 20, 40, 70. Breakdown very similar to what you saw for all funds, just a slight decrease there in the property taxes, an increase in the other local, but very similar across the board. Expenditures through all funds, salaries and benefits, the biggest thing that we see. There's the breakdown by major categories. And dues, fees, tuition, other, that does include your debt payment that's due on October 1st as a part of your last referendum debt. It does not include anything specifically yet to the debt service that was issued back in March, but that will be incorporated into the final budget for September. Here's a breakdown of what that looks like by object, skewed heavily because of capital outlay and other objects in this. If we look at it on the operating fund side of things, you see dues, fees, tuition, that's a significant drop because debt service comes out of there. So the biggest piece that you have is salaries and benefits. Doesn't include the transfer again. And then this is where your 3/4 of every dollar that you spend on the operating side, what it looks like. So it's all dedicated to, 3/4 of it dedicated to salaries and benefits.
Sorry. No questions, correct, board? All right, so board, Dr. Schuler, any other comments?
No, other than again to remind you that Finance Committee obviously spent some time with us in advance of the meeting and will continue to as we move toward final budget.
Fantastic, thank you. So board, I need a motion and a second to post the tentative budget for fiscal year 2026 and set the public hearing for said budget on Wednesday, August 13, 2025 at 7:00 p.m. at the School Service Center located on 130 West Park Avenue, Wheaton, Illinois, 60189 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Jerpy,
Second.
second by Mr. Rutledge. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Jerpy?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Ms. Blattner?
Yes.
Ms. Evison?
Yes.
Ms. Culvitz?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes. We're going to go back and do action, was listed was action item number 1, which we flipped. So this is the approval of the resolution authorizing the transfer of monies from Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund. Dr. Schuler?
Dr. O'Keefe, any additional info on that?
Board, any questions? All right, so Board, I need a motion and a second to approve the resolution authorizing the transfer of monies from the Operations and Maintenance Fund to the Capital Projects Fund as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rutledge,
Second.
second by Mr. Long. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Ms. Blattner?
Yes.
Ms. Evison?
Yes.
Mr. Jerpy?
Yes.
Ms. Culvitz?
Yes.
Mr. Ham?
Yes. Under oral reports, we have 2 oral reports tonight. The first is a report on our 5 essentials survey. Dr. Schuler?
If it's okay, before Mrs. Murphy and Dr. Sloggy go up, would it be okay with the board if we flipped these 2 items? We have a guest here that is here to talk about the second of the oral report, so if we could do that first. I would appreciate it. Save you a couple minutes.
Hey, board, any issue? No, we're good.
right.
Thank you.
Sounds good. So I'm going
That's
to
a good
actually hand it right over to Dr. O'Keefe to introduce this one.
Yep. So Mr. Chris Wasco, Wheaton resident, our project manager for all of our capital projects going on with our middle schools. He's been a great partner, a great asset to the organization on behalf of the board. We actually included in your green folder just a dual-sided piece of information. We'll walk through it very quickly with you, but we wanted to give you a very high-level perspective on where we are estimating your budget to be through the first 3 issuances. So that's issuances 1, 2A, and 2B. Issuance 3, as you'll see in the back, which has a timeline, is scheduled to go out to bid in October with that bid submission coming in November. And then we bring to you the final bid, construction bid submission in December, but certainly we'll have a lot of information for you at that point. But Mr. Wasco, would you mind just a quick update for the board?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. Project Issuance 1, which is the preparatory work for the additions at Franklin and Monroe. That's the work that's summer critical. We're in a good spot with that. That's the $4,447,100. All that work will be complete before school starts. That's a lot of work at Monroe, updating classrooms, getting skylights in, and just renovating a good chunk of classrooms in Monroe to get a head start on Project Issuance 3, which is the big chunk of interior renovation work at the 3 middle schools. Project Issuance 2A, that's the site work and structural for the 2 additions that we are starting this summer at Monroe and Franklin. That's the $7.8 million there in front of you. Those are hard construction costs. Those are the actual bid dollars we saw on bid day. All of these came in great numbers, very competitive bidding market. Then 2B is the rest of those additions at Monroe and Franklin, and that's the $25 million number you see in front of you for a total of 37.6, round numbers 37.7 for the hard bid costs, and then estimating around 49 million all in with CM fees and contingencies and everything. We've got roughly $3 million in contingencies built in. Those are dollars if they don't get spent on changes or unforeseen conditions and additional costs that could come along with unforeseen conditions, then those dollars come right back to you. Then that leaves roughly $100 million, $102 million for project issuance 3. And then we'll have some budget updates along the way between now and that October bidding date. That timeline is outlined on the back of the sheet. So we'll have some budget updates to present to you along the way as Perkins and Will continues to develop their design documents looking towards project issuance 3. And that'll be the heavy lift of interior renovation work summer of 26, summer of 27. Additions, we are starting to knock stuff down this week. So it's exciting stuff. We're going to start knocking down the stair tower and some walls at Franklin, and starting to knock down the red barn and the double wide trailer that sits in back of Monroe. So a lot of that, you'll start to actually see some activity, and we'll start ripping up parking lots and starting to do some initial site grading, and got some utilities to relocate at Monroe before we really get going. But we've got a good start and really looking forward to a lot of successful projects here. Got a great contractor team. I've worked with all these guys before, so it's really looking forward to a successful project.
Hey, Chris, just one piece, comment Monroe classroom piece. So I know the skylights are getting framed this summer. That is actually probably the one aspect of the roughly 30 classroom renovation where the actual skylight itself will probably get dropped in at some point after the start of the school year. I just wanna
Correct.
clarify that for kind of level setting expectation. Everything else is going to be done, but the actual skylight's just based on, I think, lead time ordering.
Yeah, lead time on skylights, we just, we were up against it trying to get with the bidding schedule and then getting jobs awarded and working through just making sure we had the skylights that would fit with the existing conditions in each classroom. They will just not be here in time, but we'll have everything framed up. We'll put a lid on each of those skylights that we can just remove and get the skylight installed. So as soon as we get kind of an idea on when those skylights are coming in, we'll work closely with the district and with each school, or with the principal and staff at Monroe on when and how we get those skylights in.
Questions on this? I recognize part of why we wanted to again just kind of bring this update to you. I think it's sometimes hard to see the global budget when it's coming in chunks like this, but again, recognize the strategy behind this. Being able to do it this way is what allowed us to accelerate literally by a year completion of the project, because if we had not approached it this way where you're seeing it in chunks, you wouldn't have started any construction work until after this last set of bids is done. So again, the message in this is we are tracking in good shape. Obviously, we still have a big chunk of design that's working through as we speak. So every week, in addition to the weekly construction meeting with the entire team, we obviously are also in deep conversation with the Perkins and Will team and design elements of issuance 3. But the good news is that we're in good shape headed into that last chunk. I think Mr. Rutledge asked a question in one of our last meetings about, as we look at this, what happens, right, if ultimately we don't end up needing $151.5 million, and that's going to still be a little bit of, if we don't need it, we don't need to spend it, we won't. But we want to make sure we accomplish everything that we've told the community we want to accomplish, and we have a little more flexibility kind of in the last design phase, just based on.
Could you just speak to the schedule for Edison? We've talked Monroe and Franklin, but what's the situation with Edison?
Edison will get started spring break of 26, or spring break of the coming school year. So it's a smaller addition that we just didn't. And it's actually kind of, we're expanding the south gym. So it's not it's not a standalone addition that we could work on the whole school year without major impacts to the school. So this being smaller and trying to minimize the impact on the school will take that space starting spring break and then work on it and get it completed throughout the summer of 26 and turn it back over for the start of school.
And the interior classroom work and LLC and some of the mechanicals, they'll all happen after next spring.
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge, the interior work, the majority of the interior work at Franklin and certainly all of Edison is summer of 26 and 27. We started in Monroe this summer just to get the jump on it and pull back or pull forward our timeline. It's anticipated that Monroe interior will be substantially complete in 26. That way the focus, hopefully, if everything works the way we would anticipate, in the summer of 27 would just be Franklin and Edison.
I have a question about, so the 49 million estimate, that leaves us like 102 million. What was for issuance 3? What was in the draft, plan in the beginning? Was 102 for 3 or was it less than that?
Little bit less than that, right?
Okay.
So we're trending positive, right? I think, I don't remember the exact number, but it was a little bit less than 102.
So as we've been going through this, because this, these other, the difference between the 30, just call it 38 and 49 for other fees, are we seeing that when the bids come, when we look at the bids? Or I'm trying to, so because we're looking at the bids and we've come in quite favorable, and is part of that favorability that some of these costs aren't built in at that point, or they are?
They are not. So when you're approving bids, you're approving the hard construction numbers, the above numbers. What falls in that kind of conglomerate of numbers below is a combination of both fees, pass-throughs, some owner's direct cost, and construction contingency that we're carrying. So generally at time of bid, once you approve the bid, any design contingency goes away if it's done, but we still carry construction contingency. So again, every week as Chris leads our construction meeting, we look at any potential cost adjustment, right, based on either unforeseen or in some cases decisions that we make. If we decide there is as an adjustment we have to make, we track that, right, as an allowance or a contingency that we're carrying. But and again, I think we mentioned that just to say you are still carrying what I think is comfortable construction contingency. If we, for any reason, had to move beyond that, that's a change order we would come back and share with you if we were going to exceed that cost. If we don't spend that $3 million, that comes back either into just dollars you don't need to spend or additional support that can go to issuance 3.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, board? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
On to our second oral report, which is the 5 Essentials Survey Overview. Dr. Schuler?
So beyond the budget, the moment you've really been waiting for this evening. It's the Chris and Melissa show that are going to give you an update on our 5 Essentials data from last year.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. And as he mentioned, Dr. Slaggy and I will be doing an update on the 5 Essentials survey data that we recently received. The board may recall we did give you this a similar presentation last year with this information. So we do have 3 guiding questions that we will be providing information for you tonight, outlined right here. So we are just going to start with background knowledge, reminding everyone what this survey is and how it aligns to Vision 2026. And then we're going to be talking about who actually takes this survey and what does the data tell us. So 5 Essentials comes from research from the University of Chicago. That research is all about the conditions that need to be in place for strong school improvement. They took the research and they developed a survey. And so that survey is administered annually in our schools. And the reason why that is administered annually is it's a requirement from the State Board of Education to administer a learning conditions survey. And so eventually the data is reported on the school report card, on the individual school buildings report cards. What you're seeing tonight is the district information. And so the 5 essentials are outlined right here. And so it's about effective leaders, collaborative teachers, involved families, a supportive environment, and ambitious instruction. The 5 Essentials survey actually is called out on your Vision 2026 strategic plan. It sits under the operational side of the district plan, and it specifically says on there, regularly monitor the survey satisfaction feedback and plan accordingly from that. So we do the 5 Essentials survey yearly. And we get the data around this time, but we also have our staff morale survey that we administer 2 times a year. So that allows our teams to use information to be responsive while our staff is in session and working on it. So students do take the 5 Essentials survey. That starts in 4th grade and goes all the way through our seniors. So all of our students take that. Our teachers also participate in that survey. And so that is staff who have a teaching assignment. Parents have the opportunity to participate. And as I mentioned before, that information eventually sits on the school report card that's released towards the end of October each year. So we find a lot of value in the 5 essentials. We outlined a couple of key reasons right here. One, we always feel like triangulation of data is important, and so we have our academic data that we report to you. This is a complement to that. This gives us some information, especially because it's input from staff and students, and it is done in an anonymous manner, so that's valuable. It can give us areas of focus. It can give us areas of focus at a district level, but it can also give us areas of focus at an individual building level. And because it's administered on a yearly basis, it does provide us with trend data as well. So I'll turn this over now to Dr. Slaggy.
Thanks, Mrs. Murphy. Good evening, board members. So we're going to dive into actually what does our district data tell us, answering that third question. They're categorized by 5 colors, with red being weak or very weak, and then on to neutral, and then obviously where you want to be in the green areas, being strong or very strong. Really meaning if you're in those green areas, you're organized for success, right? It's kind of that foundational piece to say, hey, your schools can take on challenges and prep for school improvement. So the way that we framed it here for you is to show you what our overall performance was last year, and then also look at what it was this year, and we've broken it down by each component, starting with supportive environment. And really we're holding steady here at strong, right? This is something that's completed by students. And in looking at those questions and the components of what they are, being strong here tells us that students feel safe both in and around the building in specific areas of the building, that students feel that they're treated with respect and there's mutual trust amongst them and teachers, and that students feel that teachers are going out of their way to connect with them. And making sure that they're learning at really, really high levels. So reported by students, really strong area here, and it's good to see that we continue to be consistent in this area. Ambitious instruction, again, probably a spin-off of that, it's supportive environment. You've got to have the environment in place, and then kids need to know, or what our kids are telling us is that they're being pushed, right, and that they're learning at high levels. So 2 components of it are our students interacting with material in a way that's allowing them to apply and build knowledge and critical thinking skills, both in math and in reading and writing. Are discussions rich? And do teachers expect you to meet high academic standards? And again, our students are saying, overwhelmingly yes to those questions. Again, for our rating of strong. Just for perspective, when you think about percentiles or what does that strong rating mean, in the fall, we actually have had ECRA do a percentile report for us to say what does that kind of strong rating mean. And just in last year in our areas that we were rated strong, that equated to being about at the 95th, 96th percentile amongst districts across the state of Illinois. I'm not saying that that will equate this year, but what I'm trying to say is strong is a really good rating when you compare it across the district, across the state of Illinois. Effective leaders, another component of our of the 5 essentials. Last year, our overall performance was strong. Again, we're holding steady once again. So this is really, really good to see. This is reported by our teachers. So, one overwhelming cascading piece would be that teachers feel supported by their building leaders, that our school leaders are putting teachers and staff in a position where they can be successful with kids. That's where the highest level of impact is at. There's also a piece on there that says teachers feel that our programs, from academic to social emotional to whatever programs are coming on, that they're coordinated, that we're not just a school district that's doing a one and done type piece, but that there's well thought out pieces and that they're supported. And also that they have some influence over building wide and school wide and district wide decisions. That's probably a result of the committees and the structures that we use to empower our teacher leaders. Also completed by our teachers is collaborative teachers. It's a component called collaborative teachers. Last year, our performance was neutral. This year, our performance fell into the strong category. A couple key components of that is really teachers having the opportunity to work and collaborate together, respect one another personally and professionally, that their professional development is rigorous and focused really on student learning. And one piece I will say throughout this year, and through work that Mrs. Murphy led in the school improvement process, all of our schools were focused on a collaborative inquiry process where teachers were really working hard on school-based problems to promote student growth. And so we've seen real success in that, and our teachers are telling us that as well. And then involve families. This is from the teacher perspective. And again, we were strong this year, rated strong last year as well. And our teachers are really saying, hey, we feel like our schools are providing great opportunities for parents. We feel like our parents are an active participant in their child's education. And then we also feel like our parents partner with us to benefit kids. So this is really good to see from our teachers' perspective as well. So a celebration, one being, is that when you look at overall, right, the 5 essentials report, the research that sits behind it would say that our district and our schools are very well organized to be in a position to be successful, which means, hey, this is an opportunity to get better. We can get better when we're already doing well. There's actually no better time to do so. So at this point, myself or Mrs. Murphy will take any questions that you have.
Board?
Yeah, thank you for walking us through this, and definitely looks like great results at a district level. Especially love to see that we did see the improvement in the collaborative area. I guess the question I would have, and I will readily confess I may have misinterpreted some data as I did some research leading into the board meeting, but I'm trying to triangulate the overall district results with building level results, because it looks like we had at a building level more buildings move in a downward direction. I look at something like Lowell that looked like it moved downward as well within the results. And I guess, can you maybe clarify a little bit, am I interpreting that correctly, that we saw some building level downward movement, and how does that fit in with the overall results, and what's the plan for, I guess, making progress at that level?
Yeah, I think one of the pieces, one of the benefits of this, of the report, is that you are able to identify some specific focus areas, right? So you mentioned a school that had some lower results. That allows us to focus in on that pieces. Overall, I can't speak to the data correlation or how they specifically come to those pieces, but I think the grander piece that I take away from it is when we see a school that may have dropped in a specific area, one, our direct supervisors who work with that school are saying, hey, let's look into this more and let's see what's behind it. Let's break down into the questions and look at it a little bit further.
Well, I guess that's kind of what I was getting at. Is it more of the building team tries to address that, or is it more of a looking at where we have relative success within the district and trying to say, what are we doing right or different in this facility to cross-seed to another? Like, is it more of a building level or more of a cross-building level when we work to address those deficits?
If there are deficits at a specific building, it would be the specific building working towards that. But this also says that, you know, from a monitoring perspective, at a district perspective, what we're providing you with is saying, district-wide, we're in a good place, but building-wide, certainly this is one piece of data that they could use, triangulated with their morale data and their academic data to work together as a building at specific pieces.
Chris, I think one of the questions that you're asking embedded in that, though, and it is something we do with the morale survey, is we look at the morale survey results and feed data to each of our buildings. We help them understand exactly what their results say, but we do identify buildings that are high outliers in areas. So if there's a particular area of focus and they want to understand other buildings that just have a different level of outcome, we do work to identify that for them just so that they can look perhaps to exemplars or others that they might want to learn from based on what they're focused on.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. I think sometimes there's a tendency of let's fix what's not working, when in some cases it may actually work better to say what's working really well and can we cross-pollinate it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Across all of these, we are shown as strong, but I don't see very strong anywhere. Can you help me understand the difference between strong and very strong and where we might be within that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I can offer two perspectives, Mrs. Murphy, if you have any other. I think the first perspective I would offer is at least my experience in looking at this for the last year and thinking about all the districts across the state of Illinois and knowing that in areas where we rated strong, that put us really at the top of school districts in the state of Illinois, top 4%. So we were in the 96th percentile when we were at a strong rating. So what that tells me is that there's very, very few that are getting that very strong rating, one. And I would think or make an assumption potentially that correlation would come out again when we see that data. I think the other piece of it is the difference between agree and strongly agree is a question sometimes that you'll see, right? And so agree is a good thing, but if you're not strongly agree and it's not 90%, maybe that's not equating to a very strong piece. That's how some of the questions are structured, but a strong is still saying a very favorable rating. That's how my initial interpretation, but there are a lot of questions, but that's the best that I could offer with looking at it. You know.
I had a question on how this aligned with the teacher morale surveys that you referenced, that I know that there are some, obviously they're different surveys, but some overlap between the two. Are we seeing the same trends here that we're seeing in the morale surveys?
I would say that the good news is we are seeing an increase in the feedback from our staff morale survey. We're seeing positive trend movement forward on that. And again, on this survey too, positive trend moving forward on that. So overall, I would say that's like the biggest correlation between those two pieces of data.
The one thing we've noted, I think you saw a little bit in this, and you definitely see on the staff morale survey as well, is that there are questions on both that kind of probe this notion of like teacher control, teacher autonomy. We've made a lot of curricular changes over the last couple of years that candidly have left less individual control to a classroom teacher. And so you see in our morale survey some step back in that area. One of the things that our team did at the end of the year is we identified specific areas out of the teacher morale survey that we want to understand more. Is we went and met with staff at every building. So we did 21 different site visits to really try to dig a little deeper into the meaning behind the data. And I think staff saw that, they acknowledged that, but said we'd expect to see that, right? Like we needed to make those changes that we made, and it's leading to results that are positive in the learning space and definitely some consistency. But a reality is that means like on a day-to-day basis from a curriculum perspective, staff have a little less autonomy, right, than they used to have. But that actually pretty consistent across both. I don't think there's anything else that I think stands out really significantly other than I think they kind of align in similar trends.
The only other thing I'll add that's just more information for you is there is a slight difference between the staff morale survey and 5 Essentials and the fact that our students fill out the 5 Essentials versus the staff morale, right? And so my team utilized those questions that were in the 5 Essentials for ELA this year at the elementary level because we were really new to implementing ELA and we administered those. We asked our students to give us some feedback in that area. And so we were able to, at that, halfway through the year, to get some information to help us before even that final opportunity that the students did with the 5 Essential survey. And I think that will be valuable to us, especially even too, as we're starting to talk about implementation of the new materials at middle school. So.
Go ahead, Dave.
It notes that their parents have an opportunity. Where do they have an opportunity to? Is that what the asterisk means, where it's got teachers, or on these slides? So my question specifically is what area is it? The complete survey. It says parents have the opportunity.
Yeah, parents do, and we work really hard to get over that 20% threshold. So if you get over a 20% threshold, there's a supplemental report that is provided. We did reach that goal of over a 20% threshold.
Yeah.
So there's a supplemental report. It doesn't, that report though, while it provides some value that tells us, hey, parents are satisfied with the district and all those different pieces, you don't get like a score or anything. It just tells you the percentage of how parents answered the question.
Okay, so their input isn't included in these ratings.
Correct.
So, and then where it says completed by teachers on effective leaders and involved families, it has an asterisk. What does that mean?
I think it was just a grammatical piece.
Okay,
there.
spicing it up a little.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just one comment. I think it's the greens are great, right? The ratings are great, but I love the conversation about what we do with it. Like, what do we use the data for? And I think that gives, when we ask people to fill out a survey, that it's not just about, hey, we're doing great. It's about we're learning things that we can use and now have impact in the classroom. I think that's fantastic. So I appreciate you guys sharing that.
Thank you. Just one question about demographic cuts. I know in our morale survey, we break it down by like level and staff group. I'm not sure what demographic cuts are available between 5 Essentials, but one thing I'm curious about is in either of those views, do we get some insights as to whether opinions differ at different, I'll say, professional tenures? Because we've talked a lot about the labor market and what's going to be our ability to attract teachers. Are enough people going to be going into the teaching profession? And so I'm curious as to whether there's different perceptions among new to teaching professionals and some of our more tenured folks.
No, the survey does not tell us how many years, and we can break the data down that way. But to the first point, we are able to dive into the data completed by the students by demographic groups.
Okay.
One thing I will mention, last couple of years, Matt and his team out of the HR department have engaged in what we've called a stay interview process. So it's sort of like the opposite. Companies historically will ask people why they're leaving, but at that point they've already left. So there's kind of less residual value than actually asking the people that are staying, why are you staying here and what are we doing? So in that stay interview process, I think the second year, they focus more specifically on that demographic you're talking about, right? So rather than just ask everybody the same question, we focus very specifically on staff kind of stratified by experience, understanding that what they have to offer us may be a little bit different. So,
And have there been any, I guess, preliminary conclusions or trends, and is that maybe a topic for future discussion?
yeah, well, one, you might recognize that one of the things we brought back recently was a new staff mentor program, and it certainly helped to inform what we're doing as a part of that program and kind of enforce the need for it. So.
Thank you.
We have one discussion item tonight, Vision 2026 Work Plan Priorities for 2025 and 2026. Dr. Schuler?
Yep, so just really quick overview of the work plans and where they come from and process, and then we're going to give the team a chance to just highlight a few things off of those work plans. We're not going to cover every item that's in the work plan, but just a reminder for the board, and Rob's done, I think, a good job of this over the last couple of years, reminding you that this is really a discussion and an opportunity for you to give us feedback and engage really over the next month. So it doesn't have to just be tonight. As you review these, have questions, have thoughts or additions, right? Please feel free to continue to feed those questions and that feedback for us. So every year as a part of our strategic plan, your work plan process, we take what is kind of a 4-year strategic set of priorities and we identify very specific items or areas we want to focus on for the upcoming year. We track that on your dashboard. So on the strategy side of your dashboard, when you look at any of the drop downs on the strategy side, you will see at the very top the focus areas for the current year, and then you will see everything below that has the previous school year generally identified with a year in parentheses. And also you can distinguish that because generally the little slider kind of percentage that tells you about progress will list at 100% for everything from a previous year. Everything under the current year will list as 0 because we're just getting started on that work plan for the upcoming year. And again, as we move through the year, generally through certainly your committee of the whole meetings and opportunities, but other board updates, we try to give you progress updates on these areas. So again, I'm going to ask each of our members of our senior leadership team just to kind of call attention specifically to kind of major areas that they've focused on for the current year and any kind of connection line to where we've been in that work to summarize it all, and then happy to entertain any questions. But if it's okay, I like to go through all of them and then kind of formulate any questions or feedback. So Melissa, we'll start with you.
Sure. So in the Ed Services Department, I'm going to highlight 4 big areas that have been a focus for us. And the first is under learning acceleration. And so as the board knows that for the past 3 years, the work has been all about securing high quality instructional materials. We have that in place now, K-8 in ELA and math. So 2 big areas I want to highlight in that spot for you would be, we're really working now on continuous improvement for multi-tiered systems of support. That is to support our interventions that are aligned to our core instructional materials, and then the area of mathematics. So this is something that the board took note on, and we certainly have seen increased academic achievement in the area of math, but the rate of growth hasn't been the same as ELA, and so this is again an area of focus for our team and outlined on the work plan. Under balanced assessment, some accomplishments we've had over the 3 years is we have started using FastBridge. We have secured a data warehouse, but 2 items I want to call out for you. We're in the 3rd year of implementing some changes to high school grading. We are going to circle back with our high school teams and get feedback and continue to support our staff on the implementation of high school grading. That feedback will also come from students. And then you'll also see the pre-ACT is called out. We have administered the pre-ACT in grade 8 historically, but we are going to be rolling that out to grade 9, 10, and 11 in the fall for students. So that's listed on there. That will help us with school improvement efforts. Under our area that has been with college and career readiness and career pathways, as you know, there's been so much work in this area. We have 7 different pathways that are either in fully developed or starting in development. We've significantly increased dual credit and started on some work-based learning opportunities. But a couple of items I want to call out. We have a 3-year plan for upgrading electives at the middle school level that are aligned to our career pathways. So we've called out a few specific curricular areas in middle school electives to work on next year. We are going to start our career parent advisory or community advisory next year. And then also we're going to start work that's connected to the career connected learning framework. There's this mosquito flying around me. So curriculum connected to that. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight special education. As you know, last year, Mrs. Hansen was new in her role as the executive director. Under the guidance of the Board of Ed, we did engage in the stakeholder engagement session. She came back and gave you a report on the areas that would be priorities for us over the next few years. That team has selected a few key work projects for next year. We are going to be increasing professional learning for all of our staff related to serving students with disabilities. We are going to be developing program guides for our instructional programs, and we're really going to be doing a study of staffing for special education. So that's the high-level overview from the Ed Services Department.
Yeah, in the student services SEL space, first just to mark out that much, if not all, of our programming will continue as it has year after year, but just a few pieces to highlight. One thing that is a continuation, it's our priority, I think it's our core value as an organization, is on student connectedness and relationships. That work will continue, right, through our relationship mapping, through the student groups that we've expanded. We're even expanding that to the elementary level to gather insight from student leadership groups down to that level, and through all of our strategies that we utilize to get kids engaged in co-curriculars, clubs. And we've seen steady increases in participation in those areas as well. So that work will always continue. We always have a plethora of strategies that are aligned to our SEL framework. And just while there's multiple areas that impact learning and student growth, and our core programming will stay in place, a few pieces I want to highlight is that we'll expand our work and prepare to start developing specific plans for crisis response, specifically in the mental health space. We've got a really adept team in the district that's working on that. So just allows us to be more prepared and secure in the event of a crisis to support the mental health side of pieces. We'll also be focusing on expanding partnerships with some of our community partners. There's the DuPage Crisis Center that's being built right here in the district, so we've been working closely with them. Mr. Biskin and I will be co-leading a parent team on wellness and safety. And then we'll always continue our work in the attendance space. We've continued to see steady increases there, but not only making sure kids are attending, but that we're having them be engaged and that they're attending for the right reasons as well. And then lastly, I'll just bring the notice in our assessment space. We continue to expand and look at all the different ways that we can monitor student wellness. In the SEL space, we have a plethora of metrics that we look at, everything from 5 essentials like we talked about tonight, to some of our more closely monitored pieces, like our SOS, our risk of harms, all those different pieces. But the big piece I want to highlight is that we have a lot of teams that monitor those, both internally, but also groups that we work with from our external partners on our crisis teams. So several things on the work plan, but just a few pieces I wanted to highlight.
In the HR and school safety space, much of the efforts that we conduct every single year are year to year. They do not change. We certainly assess the impact of them, but we do have a couple areas, one in HR and one in school safety, that I'd like to draw your attention to. One of the major goals last year was to negotiate with the CEA and come up with a new collective bargaining agreement. We were able to reach that goal. So one of the things that we want to do this year is we want to conduct stay interviews with CEA staff specifically to get their perceptions about the new contract and to also perhaps get ideas and different things that we can focus on for the next round of contract talks. We feel it's an important effort. In talking with our team also, we think this should probably be a regular work habit, that when we negotiate and pass a new contract with one of our two, either the CEA or WWEA, that following year we conduct stay interviews with members of that union to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the union members. Second one, And Chris talked about this a little bit under the safety realm. This is something a little bit new this year, is that we're going to work with parents on student safety and wellness. This is an effort that all members of our team will be part of in their respective fields. But this is something that we think will sort of be a two-way process. One, I think it will help inform parents about what safety means to our district and the efforts that we make to try to keep everyone safe. And then the second part of that is we're going to probably learn something from our parents. We have a great cross-section of people that want to give their time to this, so we're looking forward to learning from them also. So we're excited about the upcoming year.
Just a bit of a recap. So 2 major things from the finance and facilities operational side of things. First one was on display tonight, so that's maintaining the financial health of the organization through the balanced budget, supporting our levels, our schools, and certainly the HR team to ensure that the resources built into the budget match and align with the overall strategic plan, and then certainly any financial metrics that come out of that at the end of the year. You also saw another key strategy from our perspective on display tonight that's aligning our facility projects to the facility master plan. So the 3 big ongoing things that we have this summer, next summer, and certainly the summer of '27 are continued work with Sherman Durgis at our elementary and high school levels. We've got our middle school major capital projects that will be ongoing for 3 summers. And then once we get to the end of '27, the Board of Education will have fully renovated all of our elementary playgrounds. So those similar to the HR side of things with Matt and with Dr. Salagi, some consistency over year, but some major significant goals that we're fortunate to have your support for and look eager to capitalize on as we move forward.
And so rounding out the work plan on the innovation and tech side. On the innovation side, we're going to continue educating and providing both students and staff with ethical use cases and instructional training around AI, especially in lieu of Google creating AI tools for all ages now and within all the different roles that we have in our school system. We're also going to, on the innovation side, continue having discussions with staff, students, and our newly formed Community Technology Committee about the productive and ethical use of technology, particularly at the middle school level. And on the boxes and wires side, cybersecurity tends and continues to be the biggest focus for our team. And so we are exploring the viability of what we call a SIM SOC solution. So in a nutshell, we have a variety of tools that keep our data safe and secure. However, each of those tools have their own logs. So the SIM part of that solution would bring a bunch of disparate systems together so that we get a more holistic view of our network. And the SOC solution would actually be a third party that would monitor the security of our systems, because we know that bad actors don't sleep or go on vacation, but we here do. And so a SOC solution would ensure that someone is in the cybersecurity guard tower at all times. And that's all.
All right, board. Feedback, questions? Doesn't have to be tonight as well, but first chance.
Well, just can you refresh our memories as to kind of timeline? Because I know you mentioned we can at any point go in here, but I know that can be disruptive, and we get to a point where we can't add without taking out. So in terms of kind of locking in on a baseline plan, what's the timeline?
So our goal is always to bring to you in August kind of a finalized set of strategies. That's generally when we ask the board to take a vote. Really, the significance of the vote is just to help us solidify we're aligned around areas of focus. So it's really between now and the August board meeting, any feedback we'd want for you to get to us so that we can process it.
Go ahead, Angela.
Just had a couple of questions for Melissa. I noticed on the dashboard, one of the strategies was to increase the number of blended classes that are offered. Is that correct?
It sits on the district Vision 2026 strategic plan, but we don't have a specific work plan area for that this year.
I see. Maybe I'm trying to find where I saw. So we're not looking to add the number, like increase the number of blended classes this year?
We haven't had any conversations about doing in the immediate future.
Okay. Do we analyze or get some feedback for how the blended programs that we have, blended classes that we have now, how effective they are, how successful they are?
When we first started to roll out blended programming, that was something that we did quite a bit, was got feedback, and I'm going to look down at Mr. Spencer here because he was certainly integral to that when he was in his coaching role, and I know he has conversations about that. I will speak truthfully and say that we haven't recently gotten new feedback from our students in that area, most recently.
So I guess I'd like some information, maybe not tonight, how many and what type of classes we offer that are blended. I heard some feedback and I was surprised at some classes that are reported to be blended classes. I was surprised that are blended classes, so that would be great. And then I lost the tab here again for middle school electives, because that is one of the, shoot, I don't have that. That is one of your work plan for this year. Is there any thought, and I know we've talked a lot about middle school electives and where we're headed with that, like in terms of career planning and career readiness, but any thought of going back to some of the old school, middle school electives, like we're having that option for kids
When
in terms
you say
of
old school options, what are those in your mind?
so workshop or wood shop, home economics, that kind of thing. Like some of the more practical things that kids may not in their lives outside of school being exposed to that are practical good life skills.
I feel like we're hitting that by bringing culinary arts back. So that is certainly something that existed in the middle school elective space many years ago, went away, and we're bringing that back. So that's certainly a part of the referendum project as well. So,
okay, thank you. And then for, I think this is under Dr. Slagi's, I sent some communication to Jeff about this too, with the attendance. There was some data that Jeff sent to us from the administrative team meeting that occurred at the end of the school year or shortly after. And I was surprised by the definition of chronically absent. So what I took it to mean was that more than 20% of our students miss more than 3.5 weeks of school. Is that correct?
No.
Perhaps I
believe-
misinterpreted
Yeah,
the
we
data.
were. We haven't got the final number back from the state, but if we take our, like our outplaced students out of the piece and just look at our internal school data piece, we're probably ranging in anywhere from 87, 88% not chronically absent, maybe even a little bit higher than that. So probably be more about 11 or 12% of our students that have missed 10% or more of the school year. So
Okay, so
not 20%.
I think I did misstate that. I guess I just find that concerning if it's not illness or 10% missing
Sure.
3.5 weeks. So yeah, I'm
Sure.
glad that it's a focus of the
Yeah,
work plan.
100%.
That does include illness.
Oh, yeah, it's
So
any absence.
That's
Oh, it
any
is
absence.
illness.
Right. I understand that. So I still think 3.5 weeks sounds like a significant
Yeah,
part
it would be
for that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
That's a lot.
we're that's why we're working really hard on moving that target. But every day matters for kids.
I
so
appreciate that.
share
I'm
the
glad that that's in
concern.
there. Thank you. And then just, Jason, I just missed what you said. There's a community technology parent group?
Correct. So in the subcommittees that we formed, one of them is going to be a technology focus group.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, it probably falls a level maybe above work plan discussion, but the only other thing, and I think we had some discussion as a board, can't remember if it was what the setting was, but determining if and when we are refreshing the strategic long-range plan, the Vision 2026. So I don't know where that gets captured, but that was the only other thing I had.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Eric, and it's definitely a conversation we're going to have at some point through the school year, right? I think there are a few other things that will kind of connect to that discussion point that I think we'll want to bring together at the same time. But just as a practical reality, this is the fourth year of what was intended to be a 4-year strategic plan. So I think we should move that. I think as we've talked to our team, just one little piece that I'll share with the board is that your strategic plan, again, is a combination of really 3 things, right? One, a long-term vision of student success, your portrait of a graduate, kind of mission statement, a set of metrics that you monitor every year with anticipation of continuing to see growth or identifying where as an organization we need to be responsive because we see some change in performance. So you heard a little mention of that as Melissa talked tonight about the fact that, well, I think we're really proud of the academic growth we're seeing. Reality is we're not seeing the same level of growth in math we're seeing in reading. So that's kind of pointed us that direction. And then obviously a set of strategies that say these are areas that we want to improve. We've thought through the last 3 strategic plans in these kind of 4-year cycles, but I think the addition of that dashboard set of metrics, right, the things we monitor every year, actually allow us to maybe think a little different than just these 4-year cycles, right? I don't think that there's any reason why we would likely change, at least in the immediate, the focus on the kind of those metrics that we monitor. So that just might give us a little different way of not getting out of the strategic planning cycle, but thinking a little different about what does that look like in this combination of just data points we monitor and respond to every year, yet still having a clear set of strategies we focus on for the purpose of alignment of resources and staff energy, which again, I was saying this just both for board and as I have a chance to talk about this, what I think you see in the strategies and in the data points is there's incredible clarity across the group that you see behind you, right, at this table. I mean, I have by far the best strategic leadership team that you're going to find in this state, but it's because they work together to make these things happen. There's incredible kind of interdisciplinary connection and just this talent that I don't think we're going to be at a point in a year to suddenly say, hey, we've been focused here for 4 years, now we're going to completely alter course. I think we need to continue course and build on it.
Yeah, I think as the board does development, whether it's our quarterly meetings or the annual meeting, we interact with other districts and we hear research, almost every topic, like, yep, that's there. Yep, that's there. And that's really encouraging to me to see that the structure of our strategic plan continues to hold. And I think that reinforces the point you're making. The work plan items may change, but structurally we don't see or hear anything going on that would indicate to us a major pivot that we see out there. Anyone else? I'm gonna have a couple more things. So everybody, when you guys were going through your points, I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Yep, that's awesome. That's great. The couple I didn't hear, which I think they're embedded, they're not new, which is why you didn't bring them up. One was Matt, the focus on kind of recruiting and all that feedback and what we continue. I love the stay interview concept. I think that's fantastic. It's so much more intelligent than an exit interview, right? It just makes so much more sense. But the emphasis on recruiting and some of the feedback you saw in from the board, on that'd be great. And then this is, Brian, one. It's a consideration, right? This may be a really bad idea, so I'll just lead with that, right? We came out of the referendum with a really nice vote of confidence from the community on our fiscal discipline and everything we've done over the years to get to that vote. Any thoughts on ways to make it a regular cadence in terms of communicating with the community on our financial health, our financial discipline and structure, everything you just shared? How do we kind of put that in their ear, because we don't want to do that just when it comes to referendum time. So just that idea and how we make that more of a cadence than an event.
One, you actually do it. So we update a finance document every year that sits out here as you come in. Two, called out, remember back, so what missing from tonight is the update that Alyssa provided at your last meeting, and one of the things she called out for this upcoming year is actually a mailed community newsletter that we've recommended we do that twice a year. And while I don't want it to all be finance, I think as you think about communication to the broader, a part of that, right? Like just affirming those financial
of angles of maneuver. And I'm not saying we have to educate on that, but just there's so many rich and good things that happen, and that it doesn't come through a metric. Anyway, it's just a guiding thought more than it's not a to-do.
Yeah, I think, well, let's give that item to the finance committee to consider throughout the year, at least have that conversation. You know, because again, challenge always when you think about limited time you have to communicate with the community. I don't disagree with you that I think some of that is interesting. Whether the broader 75% really care about some of that nuance of that. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying I think that's something we have to think about. I think there are some core metrics that people do care about, and that's how are you spending my money? Are you living within your means? Are you keeping a reserve? So anyway, but I think it's good finance committee discussion to look at as we talk about that community newsletter. What do we build in and communicate out to the community?
Yeah, I'll pivot back to my main point, which is I don't want it to be an event. I want it to be a
ongoing
cadence, a communication. So yeah, that's good. Thank you. John.
I would just comment as we're looking at all of this, that when I attend the annual joint conference, and I've only attended 2 of them, but as I go to the different sessions, I feel like, well, we're already doing that. We're already doing that. And if I have 2 reactions, one, why am I here? And the second is, I'm sure glad I'm here to find out how well we're doing. But I'm reluctant to see us change directions when things seem to be going so well compared to what I see around the state.
Yeah, and I love that we don't live in a shell. We're out there engaging and talking, and as are all our teams. And I think that's really important to stay connected. All right. Thank you. We're on to board committee reports. The board finance committee met on July 2nd, and the meeting notes are in the attached agenda. Mr. Jerpy, any additional comments?
Yeah, I mean, most of what we worked on, you got to experience tonight with the budget. The remaining discussion was really focused around potential or definite, based on our calendar, future topics. Big ones will be debt issuance, arbitrage, options for interest earnings. And then the only other call out I had is, we talked about that TIF 3 surplus disbursement.
Yeah.
That was not anticipated within our 5-year financial projections either. So that will be a favorable input to that when we get to that point on the finance committee calendar.
That's great. Any questions, board? All right, our human resources policy committee met on June 23rd. The meeting notes were also attached. Ms. Kulovitz, any additional comments?
No, I covered the points earlier when we did the policy consent agenda.
Thank you. Board, any questions? Any additional reports from board members? John, really? Wow. Slacking. All right. We have 3 written reports. We have our monthly financial reports that are commonly out there, our Freedom of Information Act report, and our board communication log. We have 2 topics on the list for future discussion, the 2025-26 budget, the public hearing, and then our middle school capital projects. Board, any additional topics that members want considered for future discussion? Okay, our next regular meeting will be on August 13th, 2025 at 7 o'clock here at the School Service Center. We will be moving into a closed session. So board, I need a motion and a second to adjourn to closed session pursuant to the Illinois Open Meetings Act Exemption 5 ILCS 120/2 Part C, Part 1.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rutledge.
Second.
Second by Ms. Kulovitz. Ms. Hutchinson, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Ms. Kulovitz?
Yes.
Ms. Blattner?
Yes.
Ms. Everson?
Yes.
Mr. Jerpy?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Hamlin?
Yes. So the meeting's adjourned to closed session. Action is not expected following our closed session. Have a good night.